Hello everyone, it's yet another week has gone by and yet another episode of the Doctor Who 60th anniversary specials. Obviously last week I did do something a little bit new on the channel by reviewing the first episode of the 60th anniversary, that being the Star Beast. I wanted to continue that tradition going into this week to review the second of the three specials, which of course this week is The Wild Blue Yonder. Now, when you go based off of the marketing of this episode, this was the one that we definitely knew the least about. I mean, the Star Beast, there was very much a marketing push surrounding Beep the Meep, and then there was also quite a lot of marketing focusing on Neil Patrick Harris's character, who's going to be coming in part 3. But this middle section, this middle chapter of this 3-part story was kind of left a little bit neglected in the marketing, which did lead to a lot of speculation to what this episode was actually going to be. Now, admittedly, I was kind of out of the loop when it came to this level of speculation. I knew that there was like a lot of speculation about potentially previous Doctor cameos and stuff like that, but beyond that, I didn't really hear much whispers in regards to what might have been in this episode. So when this episode did happen and I was watching it, my reaction was purely just watching the episode as it was, without any form of expectations going into it. So I'll start off this review with how the episode started, which was with the Sir Isaac Newton cold open. This was a really strange way to open the episode, in my opinion. It was a very kind of out there cold open, where the Doctor and Donna land right in front of Sir Isaac Newton as the apple falls basically off his head into his hands. And I thought this was a really strange open because not only is it really weirdly toned and it's very different to the rest of the episode, but it also is like completely irrelevant. Like, this opening has really nothing to do with the opening or with the rest of the episode, apart from this moment where they change the word of gravity into mavity, and there's like a couple of callbacks to that throughout the episode. But other than that, there's really nothing in this opening scene that really has anything to do, like, has no bearing on the rest of the episode whatsoever. And I just found that a little bit strange. And, like, it's a cute enough opening scene, but I just felt like it could have done something a little bit more to actually make it tie in and make it more relevant to what the story was this week. But once we leave the presence of Sir Isaac Newton, we end up in this crashed spaceship on the end of time. And this is where our episode truly begins after the titles. And I feel like that this was a weird episode for me, because while I think that it has some really high highs, I think that particularly the first half of the episode, the first chunk, I really didn't know how to feel about it because the pacing felt really weird to me. Like I say, you had that really strange tone of an opening, and then we have the title sequence, and then we come into the beginning of the episode, and like I say, particularly the first half, where it feels like very stop-start, like there's like things happening and the Doctor and Donna are exploring this spaceship, but then it just feels like there's also not a lot of like urgency because they're stuck in this location, they don't really know how to get out of it, they're basically just waiting for the TARDIS to show back up again, and it just felt like there was this strange kind of middle period where we were just kind of waiting for something to happen. And again, I just felt like the pacing of it was really off. I was watching it thinking, what are we doing here? Like, what is actually the kind of, call to action here? We're exploring these big open corridors, and there's also like these smaller set rooms, but there's also this robot that we don't really know what he's doing, and there's all these other things going on. But this episode did have a story to tell, and once we got there, it kind of made it all worth it. Almost. So, as mentioned, while that first half of the episode was very slow and very sluggish to me, about halfway through there is a twist. The twist being that there is a being on the ship, or a couple of beings on this crashed ship, that have this ability to copy people that they see. And it's this brilliantly framed sequence where we have the Doctor and Donna in separate rooms having conversations with each other, but at the same time. And eventually, when watching the scene, the penny will drop and you'll go, that's not the Doctor, and that's not Donna. And it's this really cool moment where you realise that there is something funky going on here. And I think that as far as a monster, like as a threat goes for Doctor Who in this episode, this was something I really liked, because this episode was kind of pitched as being a horror episode, and while I feel like it could have gone a little bit further with the horror, I feel like what they did do was still pretty scary. Like there was some really interesting sort of framing techniques that they did, especially like I say, I think the scariest part of the whole episode was the scene where it's kind of revealed that they are these kind of shape-shifting, form-taking monsters. And I thought that the way that David Tennant and Catherine Tate delivered it was brilliant, not only as their normal characters, but also as the kind of doppelganger versions, because they do get to switch their performances a little bit, and I thought that was really, really well done. Like, it leads to some really funny moments that are also kind of scary, where the episode kind of leans into body horror. Like, we see both the Doctor and Donna with kind of like these really big, long, elongated arms. There's also a sequence where they grow really big and are kind of chasing the Doctor and Donna around. There's like a whole scene where like David Tennant's jaw literally drops, which I thought was really funny. And probably my favourite moment, which I think David Tennant played this so well. He kind of turns into a contortionist and kind of goes on his back with his head poking out and just starts like chasing and chanting after Donna, which I thought was really, really funny. Again, kind of scary, especially if you're kind of freaked out by that kind of contortionist body movement. Like, if that freaks you out, then I think you will not enjoy what David Tennant does here. But I personally loved it. Again, it was a little bit scary, but I personally quite enjoyed it. So I think that these monsters, like, they did lead to some really fun, but also kind of scary, intense moments that I do feel like gave this episode the horror twist it was looking for. And I also did enjoy the kind of revelation of not only what the monsters were, but how they were working. You know, they've been stuck on this ship for 3 years. They've been trying to escape, and the way they're going to escape is by taking the form of these people. And the way they take their form is by kind of absorbing their memories and their energy through fear. So again, playing on the horror aspect, their kind of role was to make the Doctor and Donna scared. Like, they were trying to purposefully scare these people so that they could get more information and more data about them. And become more like them. And I thought this was really cool because, again, they wanted to go for the horror sort of angle for this episode, and because of that and this particular aspect, it made that work tenfold. And I enjoyed the revelation of, the Doctor and Donna figuring this out and their kind of conflict back and forth with their doppelgangers. It just made for some really great scenes. And speaking of conflict, there was also a really great moment in this episode that I feel like will get talked about at length in the Doctor Who fandom, which is there is a scene between the Doctor and fake Donna, where they actually talk about Series 13 and the Flux, which I didn't really see coming. I very much felt like that whole storyline and everything really to do with the 13th Doctor was kind of going to get dropped, just because this was a different era, and also I feel like it wasn't very popular, it wasn't well liked, so they kind of want to move away and distance themselves from that. But there is a discussion about the Flux and how the Doctor had to decimate half the universe and how he's kind of dealing with that and feeling about that. And it leads to a really great moment of David Tennant's 14 just lashing out. And there's even a scene where he's just like unleashing his anger on a like air vent. And it was just kind of wild because Jodie Whittaker's Doctor was never given this same level of emotion and regret and burden. Like, she was never given that. The writing and the direction of the previous era never allowed for that. But here with Russell back and, him taking on the reins here, they actually show that the Doctor is really still struggling with everything that happened in Series 13 with the Flux. And he's angry about it. He's upset about it. He's tormented by it. And this is something that they never went into really with 13, which was crazy because she, they as the Doctor, like, that's how, like, she was the one who dealt with it at the time. And we had 3 specials following the Flux. We had Eve of the Daleks, we had Legend of the Sea Devils, and Power of the Doctor. And none of those specials dealt with the Doctor's trauma or anything like that to do with the Flux and the Timeless Child and everything like that. That was all kind of dropped by the time we got to Eve of the Daleks, which was crazy. Whereas here, we're only 2 episodes into like David Tennant's re-revival, and he's already dealing with this better than anything we got in the Jodie era, which I just think is mad. So it was a really great scene. I really appreciated it, and I feel like hopefully maybe with the next episode, and also maybe even going into Nshuti's era, we might see a bit more repercussions of the Flux, because I feel like we need that. It was such a catastrophic event. There needs to be more fallout. But moving over to a negative I have for this episode, and this is kind of in complete contrast to what we had last week, I do feel like the CGI in general in this episode was pretty ropey. Particularly, there's one kind of big CGI set that's in this episode. It's this big, long, kind of endless corridor that just looks crap, to be honest. Well, I think crap is maybe a bit harsh. At the end of the day, like, the BBC has this budget that's a lot bigger than a lot of networks would dream of, but I don't know, I just feel like this particular space, because it was so big and expansive and also white, like white as a colour is difficult with CGI. I feel like that it just didn't look great. It could have looked a lot better. But then again, there's other parts of this episode where the CGI is incredible. Like when we're looking at like the outside of the ship, looked great. And also when we're in like these kind of smaller set locations, it looks fantastic. But the CGI, just for some reason, of that big long corridor, it didn't work for me. And I also feel like the CGI on like some of the kind of body dysmorphia that we saw, particularly like on David Tennant as he's kind of morphing and stuff like that, didn't look incredible. I'm willing to give that more of a pass because at the end of the day, like, that is kind of what that is. Like, it's not supposed to look great or convincing or real because that doesn't actually happen, so I can get down with that. But the big hallway like that, given the fact that we spend quite a fair amount of the episode in that scene, I think they could have put a bit more time into making that feel a bit more tangible than it did, because it very much looked like a green screen. On the whole, though, I thought that while Blue Yonder was initially a very slow and weirdly paced and kind of nothing episode to start with, turned into a really dramatic, really scary, really entertaining episode that I was completely on board with. So I'm kind of in two minds about it. Like, I'm kind of like, the first half of this episode is very, very slow, but the second half I really loved. So, I'm thinking back to last week in the Star Beast and which episode I liked more. I feel like, initially I want to say the Star Beast, because I think in general, throughout the entirety of the episode, I maybe liked it more consistently, but then I think that while Blue Yonder has higher highs than the Star Beast, and the twist that it has really took me by surprise. So, I don't know, I feel like this is going to be a bit of a divisive episode for people. I feel like some people are going to really love it, there are going to be some people who really hate it. I have seen someone on YouTube, I believe it was George Sheard, did say that this is kind of reminds him of The Last Jedi from Star Wars, and I feel like that's quite a good comparison in regards to like the divisiveness. There's going to be some sections of the fan base that are really going to love this for what it is, and there are other people who are going to be kind of disappointed by what it wasn't. So let me know what you think. I didn't do any notes for this episode, so please bear with me. Like, if this review was a little bit all over the place, I'm not sure exactly how it came across, but apologies if I missed anything big. Because again, I just kind of got on camera and recorded this. I didn't actually do any notes for it. But let me know your thoughts on Wild Blue Yonder. What did you think? Let me know. How are you feeling about the 60th anniversary so far? How are you feeling about these two specials? And which of the two so far was your favourite? Make sure you let me know all your thoughts. Anything Doctor Who in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more reviews, if you want to watch my review for next week's episode, The Giggle, and anything else to do with nerdy, geeky content, make sure you subscribe to DC Central. And I hope to see you guys again next time.